Hey guys, my name is Kevin Beckers and I'm a freelance senior character artist currently working for Reallusion, where I help make cool fantasy creatures for the Reallusion video game. This video is about how I went from really disliking posing my characters to it being one of the funnest parts of the process. As you probably know, posing in ZBrush is a project all in itself, masking out parts, using the transpose tool to move something around, cleaning, masking the next part, moving, cleaning. To me, it was very hard to be creative using that way of working. It was always a chore that I dreaded doing. Maybe the Maxon versions of ZBrush have a better solution nowadays, but I don't use that version just yet. I've tried different things to get around it. I was using Maya's AccuRIG to quickly rig my characters and then transferring details, when a colleague of mine pointed me towards Character Creator 4 on a Cyber Monday deal, and for me it turned out to be a game changer. I've been using Character Creator 4 for all my projects that required posing ever since, and Reallusion, the makers of CC4, started noticing me using their software, and apparently they liked what I was doing because they asked me if I wanted to do a collab with them to show you how I use their software in my pipeline, and I was happy to do so because I really liked the ease of use of their software and how it made the part that I hate the most about character creation one of the funnest. And I think a lot of people don't know about the software and they could really benefit from it. CC4 does a lot of cool things like creating characters, not just posing, but as a character modeler, the whole point is that I myself make the models from scratch. So I will be focusing on the ZBrush to CC4 bridge, its rigging and posing tools, and how I use it in my projects. First off, I need a cool character to demonstrate with, so let's do a really quick time-lapse of me building one from scratch, and then we'll dive into the CC4 stuff once I have something that looks like it's worth posing. So that is a really quick time lapse. Naturally, this is only part of the process, and this is by no means the final version. Usually after making a pose or two, I spend another significant chunk of time tweaking the groom, texturing, and lighting to fit the poses I've come up with. But hey, we've got something to pose now, so let's get to that part. Alright, so first off, what I usually do is there is this really cool tool. It's called Pose Tools. You can get it from Reallusion's website. It's free and it does a couple of things. One of the things it does is it helps you rescale your model. So it's important to work on real world scale. If you hit one of these buttons, it will scale up or down your models to match the centimeters that you selected. You can also do custom if you want, but these defaults are usually good. I already did this on this model. She's 170 centimeters. And it will be 170 centimeters in Maya, Blender, or Max, or whatever you're using. So this is really good, and it's also useful to have that in Character Creator for it to work properly. Once you've done that, you can store poses, which is a really neat feature. So if you hit Record New Pose and you give it a name, Pose 1, for example, hit Enter, it'll run through your subtools, and once it's done with that, it is basically in recording mode right now. And if you look at your layers, you will see all your subtools have a new layer called ccpose underscore the name you chose. So in this case, pose 1. So now everything is pretty much set up to go to character creator, but I'm going to turn off a couple of things first. First, I'm going to turn off her hair because this is very dense and unnecessary. It won't rig well either, so turn that off. And then another thing I'm going to turn off is this knife and her sword. I will be positioning and posing them later manually in ZBrush. And another piece that I'm going to do manually is the skirt, because the skirt is very flowy. And although Character Creator has dynamics in it, this is kind of a tricky thing to simulate. I've tried with numerous dynamics programs in Marvelous Designer. It's a bit of a hassle. I'm just going to do that manually. So I have this model ready to go, making sure I have my Go Z set to Character Creator. It is, and I'm going to hit Visible. Once I've hit that button, Character Creator will open up and it will show you this menu. It has a couple of settings. Just leave this as it is. I am going to turn off the textures because I added a checker pattern on some of the subtools just to see how the UVs were working, and I don't want to see those while working in Character Creator. So with the model loaded in, we can start doing the rigging. So to do the rigging, you hit the AccuRIG button. It'll jump up because its 0 world space is apparently different than ZBrush's. It's not a big deal, just something to take into account later. I'm going to hit Create Guides, and it'll make a bunch of bone joints. It'll estimate where it thinks the joints are. Usually does a really good job, but sometimes when there's stuff like the gauntlets and all that kind of stuff, it becomes a little bit confused, so you can manually change those. So I'm gonna just move these down. It gives you a little handy little pop-up here showing you what the ideal position would be for those particular joints. So just move them and try to match that as much as possible. I'm going to turn off midpoint placement because that makes it so the movement is taking into account the normals of the geometry, which I don't want. Just want to be able to move it in world space. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to go for the ankle. It's a little bit too far forward, so I'm going to move that here. The knees probably a little bit more up around here. I'm gonna move this because this is a little bit under the navel. I think that would be somewhere here, and then the shoulders. Here you can see this is where it suggests. So I'm gonna move this up a little bit here, and that looks pretty good. So next step would be generate skeleton. Now it's gonna add the struts between the skeleton joints, and it's gonna add the finger joints, which is really cool. All the auto riggers I've tried don't do the fingers usually. This one does, and that's just a real big time saver. So for this as well, you can see here the ideal placement guide. So I'm gonna try and match that. It should be somewhere more around the knuckle area. Although fingers do work pretty well, it's not perfect unless you spend a lot of time playing around with the skin weights, which is possible. All right, it does everything symmetrically, so everything I do here, it does here as well, which is nice. Once I'm happy with my finger positions, I can do bind skin and it'll calculate a little bit. So once that is done, hit AccuRIG again, and that's it. You can start posing. You can hit the N on your keyboard and you will get the pose tools, the edit pose tools. And you have FK and inverse kinematic, I believe, forward and inverse. Forward is the traditional rotating everything around. That there's no move option either, you can only rotate. But the cool part, of course, is the inverse, and that is it moves everything around according to where you grab for example, her wrist or something. Now you can lock parts, which is really cool as well. You can lock the feet. Here you got like this little guide as well. You can lock the parts that you want to stay in position, and if you do so, you can see her feet will stay in place. You can still move the feet around manually like that, and then if you move anything else, it will stay in that new position, which is really sweet. So now you can start making a pose. You can do the same thing for hands, by the way. You got like the locks here. You can select different joints here or in the viewport itself. So let's try and make a really quick, cool pose. So when you select a joint, you have two options for rotation and movement. You have object and world space. If you hit the W key, you'll get the move object space, and if you hit it again, it'll go into world space. So that is very useful as well. Same goes for E on your keyboard for rotate. So you can really spend a lot of time making cool different poses, and I really enjoy this part because you can really experiment. The way you have to pose if you're just using ZBrush is just you're not going to experiment as much, because it's of course a lot of work to get something in a position that you want. So this is just really quick and fun. So for the hands, Character Creator has some really neat tricks. Like I said, I don't really like doing the hands, especially in ZBrush, because of course it's a lot of fingers and a lot of digits that you have to move around. So, but Character Creator's got your back. You can go to your content browser, templates, and then you find an animation here, and then gesture, a whole bunch of hand presets that you can use. You have the open hands, you have fists, you even have some signs here, a little rock on here, that's pretty cool. So you can just easily select which one you want. Let's say here is reaching out. You can choose which hand, left hand or both hands. There you go. And it'll automatically adjust the fingers according to your selection. And here, send out, let's set that to the right hand. So that is really cool. So instead of boring you with the whole process of making a pose, because it is kind of time consuming to get it right, I went on the sneak tip and I did a pose off screen, which I can load, because you can save your poses and you can share them between different models if you want. And I saved it in my content browser, and then the custom section, you go to your animation, then you hit pose here, and all your saved poses will appear here. So here is another pose that I did for a different project, and then I made this one for the main render of this new character. So I'll be using that one, sending it to ZBrush. I still have my ZBrush set in recording mode. So what I can do is, there's a little ZBrush Go Z button up here. Hit it. Just check if everything here is set to relink. Set it to current pose, otherwise it's going to export a T pose. We don't want that. And yeah, hit Go Z. There you go, send it all to ZBrush. It unfortunately also brought in that position, that it jumped up a little bit. Well, an easy fix for that is just using your Gizmo 3D and making sure you have transpose all selected subtools on. Just move it down to its original position. So once we're happy with that, you can go back to your pose tools and say save new record. It'll do a lot of this, and there you go. Your model is now in said pose with the high poly stuff, just like with Transpose Master if you use that exactly the same way. And the cool thing with this is if you then turn off pose 1, it'll go back to its original position. There you go, skirt on, everything is in its original position, and then if you go to pose, it will snap to the character creator pose, which is really cool. And then if you want to make any further adjustments, you can go to Edit Current Pose, hit that, make adjustments, save it, and yeah, that's basically it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refine that pose a little bit further, and I'm going to show a little small time lapse of the final adjustments and the final model in render. And that's it. A little insight into my workflow and how I have incorporated Character Creator 4 into my pipeline. It's a really fast, fun, and easy way to pose your characters, and I would definitely recommend giving it a try and see if it works for you. And if you liked seeing the building up of the model and would like to see more of it, I'm currently working on editing down 100 hours of footage into something watchable for my Patreon. So keep an eye on that, and you will be able to find it soon on Patreon at Tycane3D. And find me on ArtStation on Instagram under the same name as well. Hope you enjoyed the video and see you around.